ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय जन्माद्यस्य यतो अन्वयादितरतश्च अर्थेषु अभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्महृदाय आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं शुकमुखादमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः. We now enter the 10th skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. So now we are entering the most sweetest and the biggest skandha of Bhagavatam, which is the entire story of Krishna Leela. This skandha has got 90 chapters. It's the longest skandha. It is in fact divided into two halves. The first half is what is called as Vraja Leela, all the activities of Krishna in the Vraja Bhumi, which is Vrindavan and Mathura, where he is born and he spends his childhood and he comes back to Mathura and all the activities there, all of that is called Vraja Leela. The second half is called Dwaraka Leela, where Krishna goes to Dwaraka on the west coast of Bharat and rules from there. And that's the second half. So it's a beautiful collection of all the Leelas, starting from the appearance of Krishna through all the various beautiful pastimes. So we begin this glorious skandha with the first chapter of 10th skandha. So we left at the end of 9th skandha where Shuka Brahmam gave a brief synopsis of the entire life and the pastimes of Krishna, also giving the purpose of his avatar and the beauty of his appearance and his activities and how enchanting it was, all of that, leaving Parikshit and all of us to ask for him to describe in great detail. So that's exactly what Parikshit says. He begins the skandha by saying, "You have described the lunar and solar dynasties so thoroughly, O great sage. Now, please tell us more details about the exploits of Bhagavan along with his brother Balaram." So he says, Vamsha Vistaro Bhavata Soma Suryayoho. He says, Soma is the moon dynasty and Surya is the sun dynasty. So normally it is said in the order of sun and moon, but here Parikshit says moon and sun because Krishna appeared in the lunar dynasty and therefore he is always partial to lunar dynasty. So he says first the moon, he says Soma Suryayoho. And sweetly he says, you have described the lunar dynasty, which is where our sweet Lord Krishna appeared. You also described the solar dynasty. Now please tell us in great detail the various activities of Bhagavan along with his brother. He says, please narrate to us in great detail what the Supreme Lord who appeared in the line of Yadu, who is the soul of the universe, who is the protector of all beings, who appeared in this lineage of Yadu and who did the most marvelous pastimes, please tell us in great detail. He says, Avatirya Yador Vamshe Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Vishwatma Tani No Veda Vistarat. Vistarat means in expansive detail. Please tell the activities of Bhagavan, Avatirya, who descended in Yadu Vamsha, in the lineage of Yadu, and all the activities he did, because he says that every single pastime of Krishna, listening to it, is like the medicine for the disease of transmigration, disease of birth and death, the cycle of suffering. The medicine for that is to listen to his stories, and it gives great joy to both the ears and to the mind by simply listening. He says, Bhava Aushadhat Shrotra Mano Abhiramat Uttama Shloka Gunanuvadat. The listening to the glories of the Supreme Lord is the nectar for the ears, nectar for mind, nectar for the soul. And therefore, please tell me more about it Every refined person is interested in this. And as you know, he says to Shuka Brahmarshi, my own grandfather, Arjuna, and the granduncles, all the Pandavas, they crossed not only the ocean of the army of Kauravas, but also the ocean of this samsara itself by the grace of Bhagavan, and they crossed it like simply crossing a mere hoofprint of a calf. So, this ocean of Kaurava army had so many great beings. Bhishma is the main. As we know, Bhishma was on the other side, the greatest warrior whom even Parshuram could not defeat. And such great Bhishma was on the other side, Drona and Kripa and so many great warriors. And yet they were all easily defeated because of the help of Krishna. And not only that, they attained the eternal abode. And what to speak of my own life, Parikshit says, when I was in the womb, when I was sought to be destroyed by Ashwathama, it is Bhagavan who came with a discus in hand inside the womb of Uttara, my mother, and protected me. So, in the very first Skandha, we saw how Uttara cries to Krishna when Ashwathama launches this weapon to kill the womb in her, which is Parikshit. She cries to Krishna beautifully. She says, Pahi Pahi Mahayogin Deva Deva Jagatpate. She says, protect me, O great yogi, O Lord of all lords, O Lord of the universe. And she cries, and immediately Krishna comes and protects her and protects the womb inside, and that is why Parikshit is called Vishnu Rata, the one who is protected by Vishnu or Krishna. And therefore he says, please recount in great detail all the exploits of the Lord who came as a human being and who engaged in all the transcendental activities, but who is the true controller of the whole universe, who is in the form of time, who ordains the activities of all embodied beings, and yet he appeared in a human form in the most bewildering and most enchanting form. Please tell me about it. And not only that, he noticed a few things Shuka Brahmarshi said, and he wanted to ask about that too. He said, you mentioned that Balaram was born to Rohini, but you also said he was conceived by Devaki. So how is it possible that he was conceived by Devaki but born to Rohini? And not only that, please tell me, why did Bhagavan go to Vrindavan from Mathura? So we know that he was born in Mathura. Why did he go to Vrindavan? So all of these are heard by Parikshit because he is, after all, in the lineage of Pandavas. So he knows a smattering of all the events of what has happened, but he has not heard it properly in the right order. So he asks all these questions to make sure that Shuka Brahmarshi goes into every single detail. He says, Kasmad Mukundo Bhagavan Pitur Gehad Vrajam Gataha. He says, why did Bhagavan Krishna leave his father's place in Mathura and go to Vrindavan? And what did he do there? He says, in Vrindavan, and then after he came to Mathura, what are the activities he engaged in? He says, Vraje Vasan Kim Akarod Madhupuryam Cha Keshavaha. Keshava, the Supreme Lord. What did he do in Vraja, in Vrindavan? And what did he do in Madhupuri, which is Mathura? Please tell me everything. And also tell why did he slay Kamsa. So he was already told that Krishna would kill his uncle Kamsa, his mother's cousin. As we saw, Devaki's first cousin is Kamsa. So he asks, why did he kill Kamsa? And having assumed a human form, what are all the other activities he did? How many years he spent on earth? And who are all the wives and the sons of Krishna? You have to relate everything to me because I am here eager to listen to this and every single exploit of Krishna, and I am listening to this with total sincerity and faith in your words. He says, Etad anyascha sarvam me mune Krishna vicheshtitam vaktum arhasi sarvagnya shraddhanaya vistrutam. So he says, first of all, shraddhanaya means I am listening to this with great Shraddha, with great sincerity and faith in your words, O great Rishi, Muni. So you have to tell me everything because you know everything. So he says, Etad anyascha sarvam me. I have asked a few questions, but please don't restrict yourself to only these questions. Tell me every single thing you know, because I am really eager to listen to everything. And he completes this series of questions by saying that, as you know, I have been fasting. I have not eaten any food for 5 days, not even water, but none of that has bothered me because of listening to your stories. And now I am eagerly waiting for the greatest nectar of Krishna Katha, Hari Katha. So please tell me so that I shall not even consider thinking about food, hunger, thirst, and any of that, because this nectar will be enough for me to keep me fully satisfied. He says, Pibantam Twan Mukam Bhoja Achyutam Harikathamritam. From your lotus like mouth, please share the Harikatha Amritam, that is the nectar of Harikatha. Please share. I am eager to listen to that. So when he says this, Shuka Brahmam is very pleased. He is very happy to listen to this question of Parikshit, this eagerness of Parikshit, the sincerity of Parikshit. So he proceeds to now narrate the story of Krishna, which is the easiest way to remove all negativities in the heart. Here it says, Evam Nishamya Bhrigunandana Sadhuvadam Vayasakihi Sa Bhagavan Ata Vishnu. So Vayasaki is the name for Shuka Brahmarshi, being the son of Vyasa. So Vayasaki, the son of Vyasa, he was happy with the question of Vishnu Rata. Vishnu Rata is Parikshit, as we saw. So Pratyarchya Krishna Charitam Kali Kalmashagnam Vyahartum Arabhata Bhagavata Pradhana. So Bhagavata Pradhana means the foremost among all Bhagavatas is Shuka Brahmarshi. The one who is narrating Bhagavatam is the foremost among all Bhagavatas. He is Vaiyasika, he is Shuka Brahmarshi, he is the greatest Bhagavata. So he proceeds to narrate Krishna Charitam. So Sri Shuka Uvacha, Shuka Brahmarshi now begins the 10th Skandha narration. The most auspicious narration of Krishna Katha by Shuka Brahmarshi begins now. He first says, O Parikshit, your mind has arrived at the right conclusion in that lasting devotion to the story of Vasudeva has sprung up in your heart. He says, Samyak Vyavasita Buddhistava Rajarshi Sattama Vasudeva Kathayam Te Yajjata Naishtiki Ratihi. The very fact that you have got this unflinching and abiding devotion for Vasudeva Katha, that is story of Vasudeva Krishna, shows that you've got the right conclusion in your mind, because the inquiry regarding Vasudeva Katha, the story of Vasudeva, purifies all the three entities involved. He says the one who asks the question, the one who gives the answer, the speaker, and the ones who are all listening there. So here, as we know, Parikshit is asking the question, Shuka Brahmarshi is narrating the answer, and there is an assembly of sages listening. One among them is Suta Pauranika, Suta Maharishi, who is the one in turn who got all of this in his heart, and then he narrates it to Shaunaka later, which is how Bhagavatam began. So all the sages, including Suta, who are all listening, they are purified. Parikshit, who is asking the question, he is purified. And Shuka Brahmarshi says, by simply narrating this again, I am getting purified again. So he says everybody gets purified, just as Ganga water, when it flows, it purifies everything. Wherever she flows, she purifies. Similarly, the nectar of Bhagavatam, the story of Krishna, especially Vasudeva Katha, purifies. He says, Vasudeva Katha Prashnaha Purushan Strin Punatihi Vaktaram Prichakam Shrotrun. So Vaktaram is the speaker, Prichakam is the questioner, and Shrotrun is the listener. All three are purified. And now he proceeds to narrate the story. He says, sometime back, when there was so much adharma that had risen in the world, when the planet Earth was burdened with so much sinful activities by arrogant kings and so on, Mother Earth was feeling the weight of it, and so it is said she took the form of a cow, and we saw the same form in the very first Skandha as well. The Mother Earth is always seen as cow because just like cow, Mother Earth also keeps on giving. Just as cow gives milk and sustains life, Mother Earth gives all the resources to sustain life. So caring for Mother Earth is as important as caring for Mother Cow. So here it says, Mother Earth took the form of a cow, and with tears she sought Brahma, the creator, and she expressed her sadness at being oppressed by the burden of so many sinful kings and so many sinful beings. So it is said that Brahma, along with Shiva, proceeded to the pure ocean of milk. So the pure ocean of milk represents purity, that which is completely pure, the ocean of nectar, the ocean of pure wisdom is the ocean of pure milk. So it says here, Jagama Satrinayanas Tiram Kshira Payonidehe. Kshira Payonide means the ocean of pure milk, which is pure wisdom, which is the abode of the Supreme Being. There, along with Trinayana, means the three-eyed Lord Shiva. Along with him, Brahma went there, and there he uttered a beautiful prayer narrating the Purusha Suktam. Purusha Suktam is a Vedic prayer that glorifies the Lord, and he narrates, or he recites Purusha Suktam there. It says, Tatra Gatva Jagannatham Devadevam Vrishakapim Purusham Purusha Suktena Upatasthe Samahitah. So the great Supreme Lord, he glorifies him with Purusha Suktam. He is the Jagannatha, the beautiful form of the Lord, which is a famous temple in Odisha, Puri Jagannath, which literally means the Lord of the universe again, the most beautiful form again of Krishna. So this Jagannatha is the name used here. Brahma says Jagannatha Deva Deva, the Lord of all lords, and he glorifies him with Purusha Sukta. And after he narrates Purusha Sukta, it is said that he entered a Samadhi state, Giram Samadhau Gagane Samiratam. So once he entered Samadhi, Brahma, he heard in his heart the voice of Bhagavan, and then he addressed everyone there. All the demigods, the devatas were all assembled there. So he assembled them that I have heard the word of Bhagavan, and he is already aware of the affliction of the Mother Earth, the burden of Mother Earth. So he is going to appear on earth. So you all first proceed to be born among the Yadus. So as we saw, Yadus is the lineage of the lunar dynasty in which Krishna would appear. So before Krishna appears, Brahma says you have to all go and appear in that lineage, and you can take birth, all the men and the women. You have to go and take birth in that lineage, in the Yadu lineage, because the Supreme Lord is going to walk on earth to remove the burden of earth, and he is going to manifest in the house of Vasudeva specifically. Vasudeva is, as we saw already, in the lineage of Yadu, son of Surasena. So there he is going to appear. He says, with the intent to do what pleases Hari, Adisesha, who is Ananta, will also appear as his brother Balaram. So he says, Vasudeva Grihe Sakshat Bhagavan Purushaha Paraha first. In Vasudeva Grihe means in the house of Vasudeva, Bhagavan is going to appear. And Vasudeva Kala Anantaha Sahasravadanaha Swarat Aghrato Bhavita Devo Hare Priya Chikirshaya. So Vasudeva Kala means the partial manifestation of Vasudeva, who is Ananta, who is Balaram, will appear before him as his elder brother. And not only that, Vishnu Maya, which is Yoga Maya, she will also appear. So we will see the mystical appearance of Yoga Maya and how she deals with Kamsa. Here it says, Vishnur Maya Bhagavati Yaya Sammohitam Jagat. So that Vishnu Maya, which is running the whole world, which is deluding the whole universe, but which is also the source of grace, she will also appear in a human form as a daughter. So, all of this is going to happen. So, you all go and take birth in the Yadu dynasty and wait for the Lord to appear. So, this is how beautifully everyone, it says, are preparing for the Lord to appear, and they have all taken birth in the dynasty of Yadus, and they are living in Mathura and Vrindavan and so on already, even before the Lord has appeared. And then, after directing so, Brahma retires, being at peace that everything will be taken care. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Mathura. So, Mathura is the capital of the Yadus, and there Surasena, he is the father of Vasudeva, as we already saw. And the Surasena, he was ruling with Mathura as capital. And in this Mathura, there was a grand wedding ceremony. The wedding ceremony was between his son Vasudeva and Devaki, who is the daughter of Devaka. So, Devaka, his brother is Ugrasena. Ugrasena is the king of that region, and his son is Kamsa, as we saw. So, Ugrasena's son is Kamsa, his brother is Devaka, and the daughter of the brother Devaka is Devaki, and therefore Kamsa is the brother as a first cousin of Devaki. And Devaki is getting married to Vasudeva, who is the son of Surasena, who is also a local chief there. So this is a very royal wedding, therefore, and therefore there is hundreds of chariots with gold and everything. And Kamsa himself holds the rein of the main chariot in which Devaki and Vasudeva are seated. Kamsa is actually very adoring of his sister, but he is a demoniac being, and that is why it is said one can never trust the extreme affection of someone who has got demoniac tendencies. We see this even now in many cases where people who show extreme affection suddenly on a dime turn and go to the other extreme, and that's how Kamsa is. So he was showing such extreme affection to Devaki and Vasudeva and holding the reins of the chariot, and he was taking them in this great wedding procession. And Devaka, the father, who is the brother of Ugrasena, he was so fond of his daughter Devaki, he gave a lot of gifts there, elephants and gold and horses and chariots and so on. And the whole procession was going very opulently. There was conches being blown. People were playing various instruments, kettle drums, tom-toms, so many beautiful instruments, so much noise was being made. So much celebration was there. People were singing, dancing. All this was going on, and Kamsa was beaming as this son of the king Ugrasena, riding the chariot, or rather driving the chariot. And when this is all happening, out of the blue, suddenly, it is said a voice came out of the sky. It is called Asharira walk. Asharira means without any body. A voice alone came, and this Asharira walk made this loud pronouncement to Kamsa, O foolish one, the eighth child of the girl you are taking in the chariot, the eighth child will slay you. It says, Asya astvam ashtamo garbo hantayam bahase abuddha. Abuddha means you fool. Your own life will be taken away by this woman's eighth child. The garbha means the eighth. It doesn't say whether it's boy or girl, even it just says the eighth child will be the reason for your death. So immediately, so this is what we said, Kamsa, who was all affection for his sister, in that one instant his primary affection is only to his body and his ego, and therefore the moment he recognized that his sister's son is going to be a threat to his life, he instantly pulled out a sword and proceeded to kill her. He just dropped the reins of the horses, pulled her hair with one hand, took a sword in the other hand, was about to just kill her. And instantly, it is said, Vasudeva, the husband, came to plead with him immediately. Vasudeva is a very pious, noble, and wise person. And he immediately sized up the situation that this Kamsa, who was all affection, has completely turned as is expected, given his nature, because Vasudeva is already aware of Kamsa's proclivity. So, Vasudevo Mahabhaga Uvacha Parisantyavan. So, he spoke now to Kamsa. And he spoke first words of wisdom to slow Kamsa down. He said, "Oh Kamsa, you are a great virtuous person." He just wants to glorify Kamsa so that he will cool down a bit. He says, "You have a lot of virtues. You are the son of the king. How can you slay a woman, and that too your own cousin, your sister? Sa katam bhaginim hanyat." So bhagini means sister. So she is a sister as a cousin. How can you slay her? You know very well that death is certain for all of us. So why do you have to believe this voice? He says, because the voice did not say when, it only said the eighth child of this woman in your chariot, that is the sister, the eighth child will kill you. So Vasudeva plays with that and says, listen, everybody is going to die. The death of those that are born is certain. Death is inevitable, and when it comes, nobody knows. So all this voice says is, maybe the death comes at some point. So why do you have to kill an innocent woman for that reason? And as you know well, he says, the body will anyway dissolve into the five elements, and the soul will move on to another body. So he beautifully gives the highest wisdom. He says, Dehe Panchatvam apanne dehi karmanugo avashaha dehantaram anuprapya proktanam tyajate vapuhu. So he says Panchatattvam means the five elements. The body simply dissolves into the five elements. And after it dissolves into the five elements, the embodied being at the end of this body simply takes on another body based on his karma. So this is exactly what Krishna says in the Gita. When he begins the teaching, he says, Dehinasmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatrana muhyati. He says, just as the embodied soul goes from youth to middle age to old age, similarly, upon death, he changes a body, and it is not something to be bewildered over because the body alone dies. The body is formed of the five elements and it decomposes into the five elements. The soul doesn't change. And that's exactly what Vasudeva is pointing to Kamsa. Of course, Kamsa is no Arjuna. So he is not receptive. He is not going to listen. But Vasudeva is appealing to this. And so therefore Vasudeva is telling him, please listen. Don't worry about all this because the body is going to anyway dissolve. The soul is eternal. And as you know, just as in a state of dream, for example, we take on a different body. And when we take on a different body in dream, we don't even remember the waking body. So when we go to sleep, we have a certain body, we go to sleep, the mind projects in a dream different body, and we consider that body to be I, and we are dead to the waking body. It practically doesn't exist at that time. All that exists is the dream body. And then when we come back awake again, the dream body is dead, the waking body is back there. So similarly, he says the embodied soul also, when it is dead, it takes on a new body, just as in the dream it takes a new body. So these things keep on changing. He says everything is made of the five elements and destiny moves things. So wherever we are born, we are taking this body, and when the prarabdha, that is when the set of activities necessary in this body is finished, then it takes on a different body. That is the whole journey of the soul until it realizes the pure wisdom that everything is Bhagavan's play. So then he therefore says that too. He says, just as a sun or the moon, in fact, either of them, when we have a pot of water, they are reflected in it. But when the water is shaking, it seems like the sun and moon are shaking. But in reality, the sun and moon are the same. It's just the water that's shaking. So that is the example for a mind with desire. So the pure consciousness is in the heart, like the sun or the moon, but the mind that reflects pure consciousness is shaking. And because it's shaking, it seems like the sun is shaking or the moon is shaking. Similarly, the sense of I, the pure consciousness, identifies with the mind, just as the sun is identified with the water, and it seems to be shaking. Similarly, The I is falsely identified with the body, with the mind, and thereby it is caught in desire, caught in fear. And because of being caught in desire and fear, it goes from body to body. And when it recognizes this truth, and therefore the mind becomes still, then the pure sun is reflected, the still, unmoving sun is reflected as pure consciousness, and thus one is freed of this journey. So, therefore, he says, at a minimum, you have to stop committing any sinful activities, because if you commit sinful activities, then it creates a lot of fear. You will end up getting a far worse body. So, first, he spoke about the wisdom of the whole truth of spirit and matter, the distinction between spirit and matter, and the eternality of spirit and the temporary nature of matter. Then he is now appealing at least to the element of being good, so that you can at least get a good body, because even if one is not ready to recognize the supreme wisdom and thereby be freed of taking another body, at least to come back with a healthy, proper birth is important. If one engages in sinful activities, then it only results in hellish conditions, in very difficult births, and so on. So he says, at least you ought to not engage in any wrongdoing, given all this wisdom, because that will only result in the law of karma giving you a very difficult birth. And moreover, he says, this girl is a very helpless girl. She's like a daughter to you. She's young and she's a sister. She's like a daughter. You ought not to kill her. She has just gone through wedding. Please spare her. He says, Esha tava anuja bala kripana putri kopama. Putri kopama means she's like your daughter. Hantum na arhasi kalyani mimam tvam dinavatsalah. So she's kalyani means she's just gone through wedding, and she is a very helpless girl, so you ought not to kill her. Antum na arhasi. He listened to all this, but he has got nothing to care about all this. So Kamsa, he is neither moved by the words of wisdom about the wisdom of spirit and matter and the embodied soul going through various bodies and all that, nor is he concerned with any repercussions of laws of karma and him therefore getting affected by sinful activities, nor is he moved by any compassion for this poor girl, this helpless woman who was trusting him as a brother. So he has got nothing. So he is heartless by nature. And therefore he says, I don't care for any of this. And he again proceeds to raise his sword. Now Vasudeva resolves that he has to do something else. Vasudeva is a very wise person, and therefore he instantly recognizes that I have to save this woman. See, he has just married her, and because he is such a pure soul, he wants to do whatever he can to save this woman, save his wife now. And therefore, he beautifully says, first he thinks to himself that I have to take care of this woman. I have to take care of my wife. Death has to be warded off for oneself and for others. So, one of the important teachings here is human birth is so rare, and one cannot frivolously throw it off. And that is why suicide is highly wrong, and so is any kind of murder of any human, because the human life is so rare, and it is a rare opportunity to realize the supreme truth, and therefore one ought to take care of the human life in a healthy way and use the human life for the highest purpose, not to simply engage in animal like activities. So he says one ought to therefore ward off death. So let me do one thing. I will just hand over all my sons to him, because he thinks to himself, it was only the eighth child who was supposed to kill Kamsa according to this voice. So if I promise that I will hand over all the sons to him, then that might dissuade him, because I have to rescue this helpless girl. If it means I have to forego all my sons, so be it, because at least for now I can protect her. And then he says, who he also thinks to himself, all this he thinks in one instant. See how sometimes in the moment of great challenge, a stream of thoughts can run by in a split second. So when it's narrated, it seems like a lot of thoughts, but it's all in one split second. He thinks through all this. He first thinks, I have to protect her no matter what. Human life is so rare and it has to be saved, especially for a pious woman like Devaki. Let me hand over the sons because it's the sons that are danger for him, it is said. And also, who knows what will happen? Maybe Kamsa will himself die even before the son is born, or maybe the son will actually end up killing Kamsa before Kamsa can kill him. Or maybe, if at all it's meant to be that Kamsa kills the sons, it's okay. At least I can save her for now. Who knows what Providence has in mind? It is hard to comprehend. So, he in fact thinks that people anyway meet even randomly. So, it is said that who meets who, it's all by Providence. So, it seems random, but it actually is not random because everything is destined by providence. So we actually end up meeting the person we are meant to meet, even if they are living in a different continent, and we may not end up even having any meeting with our next door neighbor. So all of this happens by the will of providence, and therefore similarly he thinks what Kamsa is meant to go through with my sons, whether the sons are meant to survive or not, whether Kamsa is meant to be killed by my son or whether Kamsa kills my son, all of this is up to providence. Right now, I can only do one thing, to offer my sons to him to protect my wife. So, having beautifully come to this realization with a very pleasant face, it says Prasanna Vadanam Bhojo, which means with a very pleasing face, he addressed Kamsa now. So, after trying the philosophical way, then the way of giving some fear of retribution, having none of that work, now he says, O Kamsa, let me tell you something. You need not fear because all you heard from this voice, this Ashariri, is that my son will kill you. I will give you every son of mine, I promise you. So now Kamsa is pleased because this, everything else didn't make any sense to him. He didn't care for philosophy. He didn't care for retribution. He didn't care for karma. He didn't care for the plight of a poor woman. All he cared for was his life. And therefore, when he was told that the very source of threat for him, which is the son of Vasudeva, Vasudeva is ready to give it to him. And one thing Kamsa knows is Vasudeva is a man of his word. So, this is the greatness of a pure devotee, a pure Bhagavata like Vasudeva also, that even the enemy respects them. So, if we function in a way where we are so upright and with integrity, even those who consider us our enemy will respect our word. And that is what Vasudeva demonstrates here because Kamsa respects his word. He says, no matter what, we know he will keep his word, and therefore he spares Devaki after he hears that because he knows Vasudeva will do it. So, because of this, Devaki is let go, and then she will in fact go on to have 8 sons followed by Subhadra. But Vasudeva would also keep his word. So Vasudeva, what he does is when the first son is born, the name is kept as Kirtiman. So we already saw the names of the first 6 sons before seventh, which is Balaram, and eighth is Bhagavan Krishna. So the first son is Kirtiman. He takes Kirtiman with a very calm, equanimous heart because the son is born now. The time has come to keep his word, and Vasudeva did not flinch. He is a man of his word. He didn't try to wiggle out of it, back out of it. None of that, because it is said here beautifully that the one who is righteous, for him nothing is difficult to endure. Because he doesn't have any attachment to anything, he can endure any suffering because he is the righteous person like Vasudeva. Whereas the one who is depraved, for him no low is not possible. So one who is depraved can stoop to any low like Kamsa, while the one who is very righteous can put up with any difficulty like Vasudeva. And therefore Vasudeva with great equanimity went to Kamsa and offered him with all his heart, Kamsa, here you go. As I said, I am giving you my first son. Do what you want, kill him if you want. So Kamsa is now so pleased to see this, and he recognizes that the voice said 8th child, not the first child, of course. So he has to not be worried about the first child. So he says, okay, you have kept your word, Vasudeva, as I expected. So now I don't have to worry about this boy because he is the first child. I only want to kill your eighth child because he is the one who's going to take my life otherwise. So you can take him back. So Kamsa is having a rare moment of generosity. Now comes a very interesting and very surprising and bewildering Leela done by Narada. So Narada, the great celestial sage Devarishi, he comes to Kamsa and he says something. He says, "O Kamsa, the residents of Vraja, including Vasudeva and Nanda, these are all devatas who have taken birth here because they are all waiting for the appearance of the one who is going to kill you." So he says that all the Vrishnis led by Vasudeva and all the Yadava women led by Devaki and all the residents, the cowherd residents of Vraja led by Nanda, all of them are actually Devatas, and they are all here because they are all taking part in an activity that is meant to remove the burden of sinful kings and the burden of daityas, that is the demon kings, and therefore you cannot be sure of anything here. So he says this and he leaves. So when he says this, and when he also gives him a hint that Bhagavan Vishnu himself is going to appear in the womb as the eighth child, and he therefore hints him that all the Yadus who have appeared there in the form of Devaki, Vasudeva, and all the sons that are appearing, all the residents, they are all part of this wonderful divine conspiracy to remove evil kings like him. When it is told to him like this, then Kamsa lets go of whatever little generosity he had, and he immediately puts Vasudeva and Devaki in prison. So until then, Vasudeva and Devaki were living freely till the first son was born and he was let go. They were just under his watch, but now he puts them in fetters and puts them in a prison. And not only that, he kills the first son, he brings the first son and he kills him. And then every year a son is born, six sons are born, and every single son is smashed by Kamsa. He's such a wild person, it says. He's so greedy, so given to self gratification, that he is ready to kill his own mother, kill his own father. What to speak of these boys? He got to know that he was actually a demon called Kalanemi in the previous birth, who was killed by Vishnu, and he has come as Kamsa, and therefore now he is only intent on holding on to power by any means. He is now recognizing that this is going to be the way for him to survive by killing whoever is born there. So he first also goes forth and arrests his own father, Ugrasena, puts him in prison, takes over the kingdom, arrests Vasudeva and Devaki, kills all the sons. So we see this kind of brutal killing of even young babies done by Kamsa, and as shocking as it is, we see such incidents even happen now by brutal and terror hearted vile people, and that is what Kamsa represents. So Kamsa was having no problem in arresting his own father, in arresting his own sister and brother in law, killing his own nephews, and all of this because he wanted to somehow hold on to his dear life and waiting to kill the seventh and the eighth son as well, who are not yet born, but having killed all the six sons cruelly. So one note here on Narada's action, which may be bewildering, is that it is very hard to comprehend, but one has to understand clearly that Narada does every activity with a divine purpose. So one of that is that the six boys, they are meant to go through this destiny anyway, And therefore Narada knows their destiny, and he fulfills that by instilling this thought in Kamsa. And second, he also thereby brings out the true evil of Kamsa, because Kamsa is acting as if he was okay to spare the first child only because he thought there is no danger from the first child. The moment he thought there may even be the slightest threat, he had no hesitation in killing a young born baby. So, this cruel nature of Kamsa comes out to show the world what evil is there and what evil is possible by a human who is attached to the ego, what extreme one can go. This is all demonstrated by Kamsa. So, Narada brings it out while fulfilling the destiny of these six. There is also a symbolic meaning here as well, which is that there are six sins that are always considered the enemy of one's true wisdom. They are called as Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Mada, Moha, Matsarya. That is anger, lust, greed, pride, envy, and delusion. So, these six, when they are removed, is when first the Guru appears and then Bhagavan appears. So, that is the symbolism here. The first six children being killed is the removal of the six sins, and after that appears the seventh, who is Balaram, who is the Guru Tattva, and then appears Krishna Bhagavan. So, there is also the symbolism of why the six have to be killed before the seventh and the eighth, the Guru and God as Balaram and Krishna appear. And also at the plane of the events, it also shows the cruelty of Kamsa. So, for all this, Narada fulfills this mysterious divine mission, and Kamsa has stooped down to the level where every year a child is born, Devaki and Vasudeva, and every year he has this ritual. He has killed the six sons, and now at this point we end this chapter where six sons are killed, and we are on the cusp of the arrival of the great Balaram, followed by the Supreme Lord Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.